The water levy that the city was having was sitting in the bank, became bonds, whereas the contractors started moving their prices in tandem with the exchange rate. So we couldn't complete that project. So it's still a project that is outstanding, which government has taken responsibility to see to completion. And maybe my colleague from Zima will add on as to what has happened so far. Obviously, those are projects that are in the interim to actually just speed up or balance the supply. But as a city, we still believe we're still pursuing the issue of water recycling of water from Kami, where there is a potential of 12 to 15 megaliters per day. And its full potential, should it be fully developed, it can go as high as 33 megaliters per day. The city is currently in consultation with the communities so as to develop a project concept. And people have been saying, why do you want to recycle Kami water? But even, I haven't talked about the Gwaishangane project, I think, in my presentation, because it still remains a pipe dream. But in terms of Kami, it's actually even contained in the Gwaishangane feasibility study done way back in 1996, where the recommendations were that you cannot go and pump water 400 kilometers away and flush it back 400 kilometers and pump it all back again. So that was meant to balance whatever we are using coming from Gwaishangane Dam. We should also consider recycling, of which Kami water is part of that. Within the Nyamandovu pipeline is just doing installation of air valves to actually maximize it from current 48 to about 50 megaliters. And the Inyankuni boosters, because we believe that we can actually extract 25 megaliters by putting, instead of the current design where it has 3 pumps, 2 on standby and 1 on duty. 2 on duty and 1 on standby. We increase that to 3 pumps on duty and 1 on standby, so that we can improve our flows. But again, like I say, the challenge with those high level of obstructions actually just deplete the dams. Obviously, we have been pursuing this matter, writing correspondence to government, I think as far back as May 2019, to say, can we look at Nyamandovu and also maybe re-strategize this management, to say, can government allow the city, just like I'm saying, we have already invested almost about 4.4 million into the Epping Forest. Can the city be allowed to actually partner government and actually do all the modalities at Nyamandovu aquifer? Because every other time you will repay it, after 2-3 years it goes down. And I think the whole objective was that, can we be allowed to lease the scheme and actually manage it on behalf of Zino, obviously paying the lease and the abstraction fees for that scheme. I think there's another one that I missed in my presentation of November, where we wrote again saying the city, we believe the city is already heading for a disaster. Can we be assisted in terms of augmentation projects that I've already talked about? That was before we totally ran out. Again, now asking for declaration as a water shortage area. Again, noticing that our reservoirs are also continuously on the decline. And again, I think now it was to the sub-catchment councils to actually get those processes going. But at the end of the day, these were the agreed interventions that I think I've already talked to. Let me not waste a lot of time on that. I've already talked to those issues. They remain outstanding though. I think the progress on Yamandoko that I've already talked to, that we now getting almost an average of, we have got an additional 69 megaliters, meaning we are now getting almost about 10 megaliters per day. But we still remain not getting anything from Epping Forest, which we believe could assist us in balancing the system, and it will be critical that we have it functional before the hot season sets in, because like we are saying, the pipeline is there, the pump house is there, the pump for pumping from Nyamandoko to Bulawayo is there, but what is outstanding is 10 boreholes to be drilled and 20 to be equipped and connected to the reservoirs, which we believe is a project that can actually be done progressively. I mean, if 5 boreholes are connected, it will make a difference before all the 20 are actually put in place. So we really need a speedy implementation of that project, at least to assist the city going forward. Having said that, in May, I think from my presentation, I did show that in May we decommissioned what do you call it, Lower Ncema. And people have always asked, why did you close it? Normally when you say a dam is decommissioned, we mean that the lowest point of extracting water is now above the dead water that is remaining. So the water that remains in the dam is what we call dead water. So there is no capacity to extract it anymore. So in May, that was actually decommissioned. And maybe before we even go to Luveve, I think like the chair has said, in Bulawayo and other areas, we have had challenges at Mkanwini where people were saying because of the continuous water shedding, there is, the quality of the water is actually deteriorated. We had a similar incident actually also in Lobengula, which because people by then, it was before COVID, they presented themselves, actually the doctor will talk more to that, to the clinic, and the situation was actually arrested. Then in Luveve, at the time when we increase water shedding, what normally happens is that your pipes are empty, like I said, they are only having water once in 7 days. And because of that, your sewerage again is not being flushed away because people are just flushing it from the chamber. When they see, if you can use a 2 liter to move it from the chamber, people just flush it. Then it goes and parks somewhere because there is no sufficient water to move the sewerage now from the system. So you find that we start having increased water burst in the area, and we have increased sewerage blockages in the area. And the area without water and Luveve being an old system, the possibilities of now contamination of the pipes when they are empty are very high, which is why we started having deterioration in the quality of our water for the period. Like I indicate, we had almost about 87 sewer-related jobs in that area and 46 sewer-related jobs. And of all those jobs, all have been done, and our teams continue to respond to this. And what has been done in Luveve is that we have actually kept the area uninterrupted since the indication that there was diarrhea in the area. And we continue to do water sampling. I think the doctor will actually deal with the water sampling and the quality issues. We flush the system as and when it's required, and like I've already indicated, the area is now exempted from water shedding. But all this will only be practical to maintain in the dry season should we get additional inflows in our dams, because in some cases we really get into the instability and consider actually shedding the river at the same time. Then we continue to monitor the system, and like I said, all results that are being done, water tests are being done, usually through the Director of Health Services, who monitor the water in the distribution system. I think he will explain that in his presentation. The city, as a city, the engineering will look at the quality of the water when it leaves the works or it leaves the reservoirs, but the Director of Health Services monitors the quality of the water when it's actually out in the distribution system. This is just an illustration of the quality of our results. That in May we had a dip, I think mainly because of water shedding. We are not taking as many samples as is required, because only samples were being taken only when water is available, and these are the first samples that the health services picked. After water shedding, exempting the area, we can see that that is now going back to still below normal, but reasonably within the expected ranges. What we are looking at, that proposals we have sent to various organizations, is to add more kiosks in Ndebele. Like I'm saying, that it will be difficult for us to actually completely exempt it, especially in the coming months. So we're putting proposals for kiosks, and I'm glad to say maybe today we got a response from World Vision that have come in to say they will support us with those kiosks and also the boreholes. And the maintenance of equipment within the areas, this just talks to Ndebele. And within the same area, what was one of the biggest challenges that the sewer system is vandalized. And as such, there is a sewer line that requires total rehabilitation, almost about 1.5 kilometers, which about 1.4 million has been requested. But what we're currently doing with that line at the moment is just to maintain it as and when it gets blocked. We have got a contractor that does jetting in that area. In brief, that's what I have. I think the doctor will take over. Thank you.
This is like the situational report as of Friday, but we updated to today's figures. That we have 74 cases confirmed, and we only have 2 new cases and 1 death yesterday, which is yet to be buried. And currently there are only 27 people in isolation. And we have traced about 2,090 people that are contacts of these 74 cases. I think the rest is just going to be detailed. This slide alone is just a summary which we generate on a daily basis. As we get a case, a death or something, this is what happens. So this is I think this is the summary, in short, graphically, etc. Okay. Now, I go to the gastrointestinal outbreak. We chose to call it a gastrointestinal outbreak because it has a diarrhea and vomiting were the main symptoms, and in medical terms as gastrointestinal disease. So we, without actually blaming any cause or apportioning any blame. So this is, as of today, that is, as of end of yesterday, this is the number of people who had contracted the disease, 1,814 cases. These have been seen in their homes and at our clinic. The 13 specimens results were sent to the National Microbiology Reference Laboratory in Harare, as well as SIMA's laboratory locally, and they isolated in the main Shigella, dysentery, and Salmonella typhi. Salmonella typhi is associated with typhoid. Only one sample had that. The other one had Salmonella type D, and the other one had Shigella sonnei. So in the main, we had dysentery being the being the presenting symptoms. So if you combine this Salmonella typhi and the dysentery, everything fits in the category of gastrointestinal disease. And we then put up a small treatment center at the clinic, and we divided into a screening area, children screening area and adult screening area of those that were affected. And people may then say, what was happening prior to this outbreak? And we compared it with the previous years, 2018 and 2019. If we look there in the period, the corresponding periods there, the blue representing 2018, 2019, the brownish, orangish color, and this grayish color being 2020. This is what was happening in that period. So you realize that the outbreak of this disease was not peaked right up to the 17th when it began. They were almost the same as last year. So the clinic saw nothing. This outbreak, unfortunately, most of the people that were affected, the Shigella symptoms are typically so severe and so sudden that people can't move. You can't walk from here to the tower block there with that kind of diarrhea. So most people will fall ill and stay in their homes and get worse and maybe wait for an ambulance to pick them and go to hospital. And as a result, we started getting reports that people are ill out there. But you look at these figures at the clinic, which is what we look at every day and every week, and this is what they were showing. There was nothing untoward. Because if you had told someone here that there's an outbreak of diarrhea in Ndebele, and he was looking at this, there was nothing to panic about. But we later on learned that most of the people were taken by ambulance to Mpilo, and it was the clinical director at Mpilo. They will say, there's something wrong in Ndebele, can we go and check? And we started checking, and the councillor of the area, as well as the MP, started talking about this. And we went out into the community, and the cases started coming in. And after that period, we opened the floodgates, and the figures went up. And I think if we check there, I think maybe this is, can skip those. Sorry. There is a graph that is missing there, which would have told us what happened to it. But I don't know what happened. Sorry. But basically, this is what happened. This is the number by age. And step up, we saw that most of them were less than 10 years, and mainly it affected more females than males. And like I said, more females than males were affected in this outbreak. And by age, I've said it, that is the older ones. And we then tried to plot this against, to try and find the causative organism. This is the map of Ndebele. These green dots there actually indicate where we had more cases, clusters of cases. They were mainly in Ndebele, there around Mafagela school there, in Ndebele primary. And this line there, this is a sewer line. This yellow line going to the Ndebele treatment works right up to Kabuto Park there. And the blue lines there indicate the freshwater pipe. And we will see that most of the cases, for some reason, were concentrated around this area, in that area as well. So we're trying to find out what exactly was happening there. And the only thing that we found that was the initial cases were in this area of Ndebele, the old Ndebele, and a few in new Ndebele. And these dots there are some of the wells that were dug almost close to the sewer lines. And we will all remember that the water had been stopped or shedded in the area after the decommissioning of Iloanema on the 15th. Because our first response team went there on the 18th of May and found that there was no water to sample in the taps. It was only after the engineers had intervened that samples were then collected. And we collected the samples, water samples, and on the 25th, and we got the results around the 29th. And this is where this Shigella and the Salmonella typhi things started coming in. But by then, people were already under treatment, and we had exempted the people from paying fees and established this treatment center and the outreaches into the houses. So the water was sampled from these unofficial wells there, sampled from the houses and sampled from the household containers. But surprisingly, this diarrhea did not spread to Makandeni and the Kovaland. There were a few dotted cases, but not many. So we have been trying to say exactly at what point and what exactly was spreading this diarrhea. But when we got the Shigella coming in, it was at that point that we said maybe Shigella was, as we know it stopped spreading from using water. It spreads through other things, like we always refer to the 6 F's when we're talking of diarrhea. People's fingers, people's fluid that they may drink, their feces, and the fomites, meaning in non-living objects. It can be a pen that they share, a door hanging, a table, a spoon, those are fomites. And then we also have flies coming in. So all these 6 F's are the ones that we're looking at, and they are no longer, meaning that even if our water did contain these organisms at a certain point, but when we tested, the water was clear of these organisms, because right now we failed to link the water that is sampled from that we collected, the water samples and the bacteria that grew there, together with the results from the samples from people. So these are the deaths that we had. Unfortunately, for some of the deaths, such as that one, people were not found in their houses. So it's very difficult to link their deaths to the diarrhea when you do not find people in the addresses. And our teams are still following up such cases. But 13 people have since been reported to have died in the area, and we're still verifying whether their deaths and causes of death, their causes of death are in any way related. And this is the action taken so far, that we have reviewed the records and followed up the patients with diarrhea in their homes, and we have a long line list of that 14, and collected 2 samples to find the etiological agent, where we have found Shigella sonnei and Salmonella. We did collect water from these alternative water sources, but again, we did not get the same bacteria as we got from the people. So that's what we have done so far. And like I said, the engineer has reflected on that the area is now exempt from water shedding, but for now. And the user fees are exempt, and the thinking of the management is that maybe going forward we may exempt people citywide for the duration of the water shedding program, lest we miss another outbreak. Because a few people claimed that they did not present to the clinic early because they did not have any fees to pay at the clinic. But others said the diarrhea was too severe. Others feared that they may be tested for COVID and sent to quarantine centers. Others said if they get to the clinic, they may be sent to Mpilo, where the nurses are on strike. So a lot of things made people not present to the clinic. And as a result, the outbreak was not picked on time. We are distributing these rehydration salts, and we are continuing with community engagement. And we acknowledge the support that we got from the various partners and groups and organizations. I think I will end there for now.
As the central government is coming in to help the city of Bulawayo, what are you doing as well as an authority in terms of capital investment in your water systems in the council and sewerage systems? The other question that I need clarification is that are you having sufficient water bodies that are supplying water to the city of Bulawayo, or what is exactly is the problem? I understand we had also a presentation from the Minister of Local Government as a committee, Local Government Committee, in terms of the cost of the work that was supposed to be done to help the situation. We are hearing that you had a figure of about $77 million US that you wanted from the central government, but after the private consultants were engaged, the amount has reduced to about 8.9 million. Can you just shed a bit of light there to say where is the difference from 77 million to 8.9 million? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Writer. Honorable Nyati.
Honorable Chair, my question is about special drilling, which I presume is taking place at Rochester Farm or Eppington Forest, which we understand that there is special drill rigs that are required. The information that we have is that there are some wells that are being drilled so much that maybe at the end of this year, the problem of Bulawayo will be over in terms of water. So my question is, at what percentage do you think we are to complete the project?
Thank you, Honorable Tungosha.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is directed to the engineer on water supply. Water shedding or rationing, what happens with those with their own tank reservoirs? So that when you supply water, when some people will have their reservoirs, they store that water in their reservoir. What control measures do you have? And then the second question is on what other sources, other than donor organizations like World Vision, you have mentioned, you are engaging to help in the water problem.
Honorable Sibanda, then we'll ask the relevant stakeholders to respond. Then we'll take the last round of questions. Honorable Sibanda.
Chairman, my question is directed to the engineer. Where I need some clarification. At what point does the sewer water or the sewer pipe mix with the ordinary water pipe? Is it the norm that sewer water find its way to the water pipes which we drink? I don't understand, because maybe I'll do a follow-up question later. Right. My second question is, do you have, engineer, a database for the privately owned boreholes in the city of Bulawayo who are harvesting water from underground? Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Like I indicated, our current consumption, if unrestricted, was on the average of 150 megaliters per day in terms of its demand, in terms of demand. But obviously, with rationing in place. And we currently, I think in my presentation, indicated that we supplying almost just about 100 megaliters per day into the system. And I did elaborate that this will actually be because of the current cold season, and that is likely to increase when the hot season sets on. Then the other one was on the exact point of contamination. I think in the report we do indicate that the challenge with water shedding, while that could have been a best and it was repaired, but the current challenge with the water shedding is that water can actually ingress into the pipes, or the water that remain in the pipes, even if the pipe is not broken. If the pipes have no water for a period of 6 days, it doesn't mean that all the water in the pipe have actually been flushed out. Some water will remain stagnant within the pipe. So when you resupply, it is that dirt that now presents itself into the system because of your opening and closing. So which is why we're saying the exact point of contamination cannot really, we cannot say soil really entered here, because at the moment we didn't have that evidence, because what was picked was a broken pipe, but our teams, when they repaired, they indicated that they isolated the possibility of contamination. And as usual, it's not the first time that we have a situation where we got a burst and there's a sewer pipe. Then every time they do that, they actually flush the system and restore. But now, because of the time that the system has no water, those possibilities of sewer ingress into the system are very high, actually in Ndebele. And I think in the report we do show that there's actually a contractor working in that area to actually rehabilitate the water lines, because of any leakages in the water line will present themselves to a potential of actually leakage, because they run on parallel, almost just 3 meters apart, especially in the old design. But the current proposed design is actually push the water in front of the households so that we actually minimize those possibilities. Then the investment in water, yes, the city does investments, but I think like the other one that we showed, the 4.4 million, where the city has actually gone into the Zenzele territory and actually put in $4.4 million US to try and harness water for the city. Over and above that, we have got the Africa Development Bank funded program, which was in response to our master plan that we prepared way back in 2012, where currently the project is almost about, of the value, almost 34 million US. And I think those are the works that, Honorable, you saw when you came in the last meeting that have been done, are completed. And I think in terms of our purification results that come out of the treatment works are always okay. They are done continuously. But like I said, the system monitoring is actually done by the Director of the Health Services. So those investments are actually adequate. Then whether the water supply from our water supply bodies are adequate, I think in my presentation I did show that they are no longer adequate. As you could see that in the past we have a drought, an impact once every 10 years. It reduced to almost once every 4 years. But now it's almost continuous in the last decade, that almost every other year there was a drought, our inflows into the reservoirs are no longer adequate, which is why we're still appealing for our colleagues, as you know, to actually complete the other water bodies, mainly Umchabezi and the Epping Forest schemes that are actually in place. Then the interventions that the city had requested for, or had said is possibilities of actually improving water, the storage of the water supply for the city. We had, I think, the Epping Forest project, the Nyamandlovu project. Within that, the Epping Forest, also within those proposed schemes, the Mchabezi, I think the figures that were given government were the figures coming from Zino. It's unlike the city was actually calculating those figures. We're being given the figures by the partners that should actually do those projects, especially in Chavezi, Epping Forest, and Rochester. But what the city added on those projects was that because of the frequency of droughts, we believe that before we can get to Kwaishangani, let's explore further the underground water in Nyamandlovu, further down sawmills. Because when you follow the railway boreholes that were being used for steam locomotive, their yields, they grow as you grow further north. And we believe that sawmills is another potential site of which another 20 megaliters can actually be extracted. So these actually we're looking at the long-term interventions, whereas what was proposed by the consultants was what we need now to survive. But like I was saying, what happens if it doesn't rain in December 2020, or we just get the normal rains, which our normal rains normally never feel Lower Ncema, they never feel Umzingwane, they never feel Upper Ncema. So I think our approach was, let's not stop on the immediate interventions, let's look at the longer term, because we don't believe Kwaishangani Dam, the pipeline from Kwaishangani to Bulawayo will be in place in the next 5 years, but I stand to be corrected. So that's why there was that difference, because within those schemes we also put in the Kami project that we talked about as a long-term strategy. I think the drilling of boreholes for special equipment, I think Engineer Rosen will take that, but let me just finish off what I have. Then in terms of the storage tanks when rationing is done, yes, we actually having those challenges that those people that have Jojo tanks, they will always fill in their water when water rationing is actually scheduled, is actually being implemented. But we've been working on a process where we identify all those properties and actually we'll be installing some restriction teeth so that nothing really goes into the tank as long as that tank is 3 meters above ground. Your water won't go into that so as to minimize those youth consumption from those. But in some cases, we believed that they are actually ordering their own private water into those boreholes, and most of them have actually boreholes drilled within their properties. And then I think the other one was on the water pipes. I think I covered the distance between the water pipes and the sewer pipes. Then the database of boreholes, of people with the boreholes, that again maybe I can leave to my colleagues on that. What we have as a city is the database of the boreholes that the city has drilled and actually continues to manage, and also get other players coming on board, which is almost about 350 boreholes that are scattered in various communities to assist the communities whenever we don't have water supplies coming through.
The Nyamandovu area sits on Karoo-type soils. So it's your sandy soils where if you do normal drilling techniques, the balls actually collapse. So you have to use special drilling techniques, which then makes the balls really expensive. They go through a process that's called mud drilling. What they do is, as they drill in, they have a mud slurry, which they throw onto the sides of the walls, which stabilizes the walls, and then gives them enough time for them to put the casings down. So whereas an average ball costs you anything between, say, $2,000, those can cost anything from $15,000 to $20,000, just because of that process. At Rochester, under the program, we were given 10.6 million by central government, and the project was to equip 15 balls, complete with all, fixing all the pipes and everything. Because of the urgency of the situation in Bulawayo, instead of actually working on the pumping mains, we left some of them leaking, etc. And we then equipped 20 balls. We got an additional, the money has now come through, we got an additional 4.6 million, which we are now, 7.4 million. That's the money we're now using to get the whole system more efficient. So we're putting in things like meters, we're repairing all the pipe leaks. You got big pipes there, 500, 400 diameter steel pipes, which just one length alone is costing something like $300,000 some dollars. So that's what we're going to be using that funding for right now. The process going on right now is actually procurement of all the spares and everything, and then we're hoping we should be through with all that work in about a month. When we come to Epping, as Engineer Dube has already said, the project started some time back, and we were looking at drilling 20 balls to give us the 10 megaliters a day, which we require for Bulawayo from there. Under PSIP funding, we drilled 10 balls. We did one of the reservoirs, and funding dried up, so to speak. The city then came in, partnered with us, and they came in and said, listen, the project's, and it's a project that has to continue. And with their funding, we then completed the pump house, we did the additional reservoir, and we did the pipeline from Epping to Rochester to connect up the whole system. So what's outstanding now is, of those 10 balls that we drilled under PSIP, 2 of them collapsed. So there's an outstanding 10 balls to be drilled, plus the 2 to replace the ones that collapsed. So roughly we're looking about drilling 12 balls and equipping all 20 balls. So we're going to we're going to equip all those 20 balls, and we're then going to do all the interconnecting pipes from those balls to the 2 reservoirs at Epping, and we'll then be able to pump through to Rochester, which will then give the city an additional 10 cubes an hour. 10 megaliters a day, sorry. So that's a position we're in. The cost on that, we estimated 1.5 million, and that's US dollars, and that's the same cost that the consultant has also come forward with. We had a visit to the site by both the Minister of Local Government and the Minister of Finance, and when they visited the site, indications were that they were saying definitely the funding will be made available because they saw the urgency of the project. But to date, we haven't received any notification of any funding for Epping Forest. Right. On Rochester, I would say we now just doing the processing of that, of the 4.6. So at Rochester, I would say we're about 85% complete. Rochester, if all the materials come through, we'll finish that in a month. On Epping, as I said, Epping, I would put Epping at about maybe 70%. And the time scale at Epping now very much depends on the drilling of the poles. Like I said, those are specialized poles. And depending on how many rigs we get available, if we can do those 12 balls, it would probably take maybe about a week or so on each ball. So you're looking 12 weeks maybe to just drill the balls. And then the rest of the work, I would say in about another 3 weeks we'd be able to complete that. Zinwa didn't have the opportunity to actually look at his designs and costings. So we had some of our own proposals. Like I'm saying, at Epping, I think our figures agreed. At Mchabezi, he had a proposal that was different from what we wanted to do. We were proposing to put an additional line, totally, separate system, so that we double up the system. Whereas in his proposal, he's proposing to actually put booster pumps along the way. And in that way, he wants to increase the velocity in the pipes. But we haven't been privy to his actual designs. So our design section hasn't even had the opportunity to look at his designs to see whether what he's proposing will work or not. So I think that's where some of the price variations come in.
Maybe the engineer from Zeno may not be in the know as to the variance, the cause of variance. May I, with your permission, ask that the town clerk clarifies that variance to the honourable member?
Okay.
Thank you.
The engineer did mention that other than what was being proposed by the consultant, the government consultant, that we aimed all our dams at a very short period of time. We're looking at water augmentation. The two projects that we added on, other than those projects which had been proposed by Zeno, were coming, which had 28 million. And we also had suggested north of the Epping forest, about 20 million. So you can see that the 68 million that we're talking about, and also the 74 million, it almost goes back to the figure that the government consultant was talking about. And we can share with the honorable members of parliament or parliament officials the list of projects that were proposed and what the consultant actually picked, and excluding the two main projects that we thought were going to augment water rather than emptying, following the 21 dam rule which the engineer was referring to.
For the same work to be done that you wanted 77 million, right? The same work could be done with 8.9 million. We were not given the information that it was a substitute to what we wanted to do, but they said for the same works that we requested, the 77 million, the same work can be done with 8.9 million. That is the information that we were given. So I think if you can maybe give us written evidence to say this is exactly what we wanted to do and this is our costing and this is what they proposed that is different from what we requested. I think maybe one way or the other, maybe we can know exactly what happened. And I mean, on that particular issue, can you supply us maybe with the evidence to that regard? Thank you.
Besides Zeno projects, there were projects that the city was working on, which the city provided a government with a breakdown on what needs to be done to augment Bulawayo water. Then there's what the consultant then came in to trim to say this could be done in the immediate and this could cost less for the projects.
The need for members to read the document and understand.
Yeah.
But there are question marks.
Okay.
We have taken note, Honorable Wright.
Okay.
Okay, Honorable Spanda.
Not knowing what is happening, which came from government, and the city council is explaining more than Zima. Zima should be in a position of explaining exactly what transpired in terms of figures mentioned by the honorable member. Why is the Zima engineer not knowing and not carrying any documentation, as you say, Honorable Chair? So I propose that, as you said, he must bring proper papers indicating what transpired, not the council to explain. Because I believe that this project was from the government, money-wise, and the Zima should know more than the council.
So abantu abaningi baba affected nge-diarrhea ikakhulu omama. Engicela ukwazi ukuthi kambe bangaba nama-statistics abantu laba yini njalo nxa ngabe umkhuhlane usuyehlile ikhansili lesandla yini sokuncedisa abantu laba ngoba isikhathi esiningi nxa kulobunzima kunje umuntu othola nzima umama. Okwesibili siyakwazi kwezinye indawo ngoba amanzi ahlupha indawo zonke lapha siyabona sikhala ngokuthi ama-pipes besiba lengcekeza. Sinendawo nje emaphisa growth point besihlushwa ngamanzi kodwa besibona izingwa sometimes ithwala amaroli nama-drums ihambe ebantwini isiyancedisa abantu ngoba lesi isikhathi se-COVID-19 umuntu lo muntu kumele ehlale ekhaya. So lapha futhi okwesibili ngingazi ukuthi izingwa leso sikhathi yayidinga yini indlela zokuthi amanzi aclean ihambise ebantwini ngenxa yokuthi kulabantu abanye bagogekileyo, Honorable Chair, abafana lami nginje angakakwanisa HIV korona ukuthi la ile gabha lakhe elayinela abantu ndlela bani ekade senziwa izingwa lekhansila njalo councillors number 3 lina yini okufanele libe lama-statistics abantu ezindaweni zenu ngoba livele ebantwini izihlobo zami. Khathesi kunje kuyafiwa ukhansila ngewadi yakhe kahambele abantu bakhe ngoba kakusabuthwana unanzelela ukuthi kambe bangabakhona nasebehlaselwe yi-diarrhea abanye abantu bavalelana ezindlini bathule. Ingozi ekhona ukuthi ngomkhuhlane okhona we-COVID-19 mase ehlasele i-diarrhea lana kuzathelelwana kathi umntwana usegula umkhuhlane wona lo othatha abantu. Isicelo sami njengomngane wenziwa lami libona ngiblind, please visit those people ukwenzela ukuthi labo ngabantu njengathi babe ngalandlela zokuthi bangazincedisa njani. Thank you, Chair.
Looking into the scary numbers or the scary number of days that you provide water in the city, what percentage is your non-revenue water vis-a-vis your production capacity? Then the last one is to the mayor. We've been reading in the newspapers that you were given an opportunity to lease a 3.5 hectare land for 165 Zimbabwean dollars. And there have been an outcry in the community. What's your comment on that? Because a number of people, they are saying that amount is very ridiculous, is very small vis-a-vis the size of land that you were given, taking taking the position that you are holding at the council. Can you comment on that? Thank you.
Mine is a concern, Mayor and your team, calm down. What is the justification of recycling Kami Dam vis-a-vis what has happened in Iluveve? Number one. Number two, the Director of Health Services talked of waiver for user fees for the GTI diseases. I want to know whether this waiver for user fees was at council, health institutions, or both government and council institutions. Last but not least, I don't know your worship and your team. If you look at the emerging trends, global trends, in terms of conflict it is water related. Look at the countries, Ethiopia, Egypt, they are quarreling over the Nile. And with the devolution coming into place, each province would want to claim its natural resources. And all your water sources are not within your province. What plans are you putting in place? I know a town clerk would say it is central government responsibility. But would expect you as a council to have a dream or a vision that will fit into central government in terms of building a dam that will call yours. Ndebele sithi kuba lokuboleka alilandimi. Kusasa ama province lawa imat south lemat north bazathi hayi siyabonga council la sakhile kodwa sesicela kungokwethu. Thank you.
Izina iyabaleka. I've been a councillor at Victoria Falls for 7 years. Izina vele ayisebenzi kuhle ama councils. Izina iyathenga ngasazi ngento zenzakala. But ngaku life izina iyabiphambili ithi ungagebhoka umgodi lapha iyabuya sizobamba amanzi. But ngabantu sebesifa like what happened eRubebe. Izina kayisakwazi ukuthi ngabe kuyinokwenzakala ngabe kuhamba njani. It is not right. Izina kayenza njengokuthi kana wathera mvura yakho zino kuphile. Isifuna ukubona ukuthi amanzi sengawezino. Akuncede ukuthi izina ibe khona ifake isandla ngakumnandi. Ngaso kunje izino singanika isazi lutho. Singamsidinga information ebantwini. Zino lapha kufa abantu. Sifuna ukwazi ukuthi izinto zimi njani ngoba kuphela imphefumulo yini abanikazi bamanzi. I-council kuya secondary. Thina sithi abanikazi bemali.
Chair, this late list we are talking about was advertised in the press, and the advert for the responses were expected by the 19th, and we received the 19th of June. And expectations were that people were going to object, and after objections, we've received the objections. The objections were then going to be taken back to council for consideration. I therefore, Honourable Chair and members, ask that this issue may not be properly before you. Let's allow the process to be complete, and therefore submit a report to you after the completion of the whole process.
Okay. It should concentrate on all councillors. Maybe it's a privilege to them all that they get something. Because once we say the mayor, it's as if there's an offense committed. So let's wait for the process, but include the mayor. I mean the councillors also. Maybe it's part of their privileges.
We are not only going to look at the mayor only. The senior officials and officers of council, how do they benefit on this one, and what is the criteria for allocation?
Okay. At the moment, the city non-revenue water is about 44%, of which 31% is what we call physical losses, mainly relating to breakages and leaks, and the balance being commercial losses. That is misreading of meters or underestimation of meters, of which within the current project under Africa Development Bank, we have identified almost about 4 suburbs that we're working on, where we'll be replacing about 48 kilometers of network, actually 45 kilometers of water network to actually reduce the leaks. And we'll be replacing almost 18,000 water meters to improve on billing and billing accuracy. And within the same project, we're actually working on the integration of our billing data and our GIS and our call center, so as to make sure that these processes talk to each other to improve on customer relations and customer response, especially to faults. Is work that is going on. The intention at the beginning of the project was to do almost 116 kilometers of water network, but unfortunately, because of prices in terms of responding contractors to various components of the project, that could not be achieved. Then Kami Dam, I think, Chair, like you said, it's devolution. That's the only dam we have as a city. Maybe I'm coming to that, Chair. It's the only dam that we have as a city. Normally when you see statistics about the capacity of dams in the Bulawayo metro, they are always sitting at 96%. That's Kami Dam and Umkhuze. So those are the only two reservoirs. So we have no option than to try and recycle. But maybe the background, Chair, being that even the Kwaishangane project, I think I did say in my presentation, it's saying it doesn't make sense that you go and pump water, use so much energy from all the way, 350 kilometers away, bring it into the city, put it into Kami Dam, let it go back to Kwaishangane and pump it again. So to manage it, part of the tariff, the proposal says we should at least actually recycle 20% of that, of which the estimation was 150 megaliters, and 20% of that is about 30 megaliters per day. And what we've been doing, it's not a project that came out now. It has been on the cards since, I think, 1996, like I say. And work is currently being done in the catchment where people are saying the pollution is coming from. And that work is actually address the pollution. And currently, as we speak, contractors are working on the the sewer mains to reduce the contamination on the river. And the work is being done also at the treatment works to actually improve the quality of the effluent that comes out of there. And starting from other countries like Namibia is doing that. It has been actually Windhoek, I think you might find that some of us have been to Windhoek and we drank water in Windhoek in Namibia. It's actually recycled. It's not very new. And we actually pursuing technologies, both which will use the natural processes and the reverse osmosis that can be looked into. We have looked at such studies even in South Africa. It's starting to happen because of our dry environment. It's not, if we could get clean water into Kami Dam, we would definitely want to utilize it. But we still believe it can be done if all treatment processes are taken into account.
In particular, UNICEF did distribute some containers to store water if and when the water shedding occurs in those areas. And that is actually to try and assist people. Because some people, we may say store water, but they are too poor to actually buy any container. It is not only UNICEF, but I'm just giving UNICEF as one of the examples of organizations that came up with containers to assist people to store water when water shedding occurs. And I think the engineer has taken care of the coming water, and we will continue to monitor it. And some countries are actually recycling up to 90% of their water. Israel, and I'm sure all of us who read the Bible will know that they always talk of the river Jordan because they are on the river. So, and they can't afford to let that water go and disappear, so they recycle a good fraction of it. Then the graph there I think the honorable member was looking at these figures that we have always had diarrhea figures. These are cases, these are not deaths, sir. And in a particular time of the year, especially when it becomes cold, there is a virus called the rotavirus, for which our children are being now vaccinated against to prevent that rotavirus diarrhea. And it tends to affect children under the age of 5. So there is now going to be we have gotten assistance from World Health Organization and through the Ministry of Health. We're going to be following up some of the children in these affected areas to see whether some of them may not have been affected by the rotavirus, meaning that not everybody who had a diarrhea infection there or a condition was due to the salmonella and the shigella that I referred to earlier. So the diarrhea figures are always there. This is why we have some baselines like that last year it was like this, but it's rising. But if we check during the outbreak, this is what the figures now became when we actually kind of bypassed the clinic, normal clinics set up, and the fares went up. So at our peak, we were up there, which is almost 390 something. That's how the figures now started going up as soon as I found that slide that I was looking for. This is how the figures responded as soon as we opened the floodgates, we made the fees waiver, and that waiver, unfortunately, we only have authority over council-operated clinics. The central government operates the other central hospitals within the city, that mainly United Bulawayo Hospital and Ndebele, and their policies there we have no control over. But what we did do was the waiver on our council clinics as well as the ambulance fees, which we control. So in the figures, this is what they did up to there, which was around June. Then right here, these are the figures as of Friday. And yesterday, as of Saturday, only 16 people were seen from around there. So we think the outbreak is almost over. I'm sure if you are looking at that, we all agree that somehow it's being controlled. And currently, like I said, there is no water shedding in the area. So the availability of water, the availability of treatment has brought the outbreak down there is now under control. So we think we will extend this waiver to all the clinics, at least for the duration of the water shedding, to make sure that we pick these cases early in other clinics as well, because some people may not present to the clinic. Like the Lopengula one, the engineer spoke of, people there, out of 60 people, only 2 people went to the clinic. And even then, they went to the clinic for other reasons. And just mentioned the diarrhea in passing to say, yeah, I have a backache, but I had some diarrhea last week. Meaning that they took the diarrhea lightly. Fortunately for them, it was transient and it stopped. The engineers went in, repaired the system and flushed it, and the diarrhea disappeared. So it may occur in other suburbs, and people may plead poverty and inability to pay. So we think as part of the surveillance, we will allow those with diarrhea symptoms and to present at the clinics going forward. But it's yet to be put in the writing, at least for others, to be citywide. For now, it's going to be enforced in November.